Hello, everybody. We're going to get started right away because we have a jam-packed agenda today. So I want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Safe Reimagined with AI, What Changes and What Doesn't. My name is Karen Siers, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with two outstanding leaders. Dr. Stephen Mayner, he's a SAFE Fellow in SPCT, and Doug Less, he's a business strategist and transformation coach, also in SPCT. We're standing at a historic crossroads. AI isn't coming, it's already here. Today, we'll share what we've learned from the front lines, what's evolving, what's enduring, and what's essential as we integrate AI with Scaled Agile Framework. So you met us briefly just a second ago. I told you who that I was with, but I wanted to take a moment and kind of reintroduce ourselves and maybe give just a little bit more background. I'm Karen Siers. I've worked with Fortune 100s navigating strict regulations and massive scale, and with scrappy startups moving at lightning speed. I like to juxtapose those two. The contrast has given me a front row seat to what works and what doesn't. And when it comes to both Agile and AI adoption, spoiler alert, it's not always about the technology. Joining me are two powerhouses, Dr. Stephen Mayner, one of the original architects of SAFE, and a brilliant mind when it comes to scaling Agile in the real world. And Doug Less, a transformation expert who's led organizations through the messy, meaningful work of making change actually stick. We're super excited to have this discussion together because we each bring a different perspective and real-world, boots-on-the-ground experience on where AI meets SAFE and why now is the time that you need to lean in.
All right. Well, I'm Doug Less, and I want to start this with something interactive for a change. So a lot of webinars, you may not get a chance to interact, but we'd like to know where you are, your organization, currently in your AI journey. So we've got a little live Mentimeter survey set up. So all you have to do is either scan this QR code with your phone. Yeah, we know you're probably multitasking too. So you probably got that phone within 3 feet of you. So scan that QR code, let us know, or go to menti.com and enter the code that you see at the top of the screen. And we're just gonna leave this open for just a couple minutes, and we're also curious to see how this data compares to some data that we'll show in a little bit that we've learned from some SAFE organizations. A lot of people experimenting, just beginning. I'll let this go for another minute or two.
Doug, while we're waiting, I just want to tell everybody this is being recorded and will be available on demand, and also you'll be sent a link or some access to it. So just want to go ahead and get that question off the table because it seems to be a popular one.
And we do have some monitors monitoring the Q&A. We'll have some Q&A later, just to add that to that, Karen, that we'll have some Q&A later. So if you have a question, we've got time set aside at the end, and we've got moderators that are going to be, grouping some of those questions, finding some really juicy ones, and laying it on us. So, all right, we got about another minute here. It's interesting. A lot of people are just beginning, experimenting. 1% out there operating with full AI fully integrated into business processes. I want to talk to you, right? Because I bet you've got some stories to tell. All right, well, a little bit of movement here. So thank you for that. It's always fun to see how that compares to some other surveys that we're doing along the similar lines. So what are we going to cover today? The real meat of this is we're going to really start by saying, just like we saw in that survey, a lot of people are just beginning or doing some AI pilots. And if you were at our last webinar, we talked about the fear of missing out and the fear of messing up as it relates to AI. So our little premise here is, look, you're exactly where you need to be. And you're not behind. You're where you need to be. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then Dr. Steve Mayner will actually talk about the state of safe in AI, what we know. So he just came back from Sorrento, where they introduced the State of Safe survey, and he's going to be covering what we know about AI through what we've surveyed from safe practitioners. We'll cover the safe principles in AI, what changes, what doesn't, and we'll talk about building the AI competency, in particularly for your enterprise, how building the AI competency is actually anchored in agility. How these two just there's a symbiotic relationship between the two, and we'll talk a bit about that. So that's where we're going to go today. So I want to start by telling you you're exactly where you need to are. You exactly where you are need to be. Can't even talk today. So don't be fooled. I say fake news here. Don't be fooled by the AI headlines that you see every day. What's happening at companies like Anthropic and OpenAI and Microsoft and Google, they represent the absolute bleeding edge. They're not the operational reality for most organizations, including obviously your organizations that people took the survey. So look, there's some really cool stuff out there. I admit it, right? Some really neat stuff. I mean, who hasn't gone out to ChatGPT and created your own action figure already, right? I have. So, fun stuff. Still looking for the practical applicability of that, but hey, lots of neat stuff out there. But the truth is, what I'm seeing in the field is most businesses are still in the early experimental phases, not the full-scale transformation that the media portrays. Success stories get oversimplified. We don't hear about that messy middle, those 18 months of trial and error before all of a sudden you have success with AI. So I've been saying this to a lot of clients lately. Hey, that's a really cute AI pilot, but how does it scale, right? How does it really scale? So there's actually tremendous value also in not being first. I call this avoiding the pioneer tax. Letting the others experiment first, then you can gain visibility into what works, what doesn't, before committing your important resources and making an investment. Now, I'm not talking about avoiding innovation. It's about innovating with some intelligence. You can direct your resources to more mature AI solutions with clear business benefit. Plus, all the extra time that you have now allows you to prepare your data infrastructure, your governance frameworks, your talent development. And Karen's going to be touching on that a little bit later. So you're not behind, but I will caution this. I believe we've reached an inflection point. AI capabilities have matured sufficiently such that I believe the implementation risks are now outweighed by the competitive risks of inaction. The early pioneers, you can go research them. They've created proven implementation strategies and patterns, cookbooks, if you will, that you can start to leverage immediately. What was once a differentiator, AI, and it's been around for years, is now rapidly becoming an expected capability. Look at companies like Walmart, who let early retailers experiment with AI-powered inventory management before implementing their own refined systems based on those lessons learned. Or JP Morgan Chase, which is a great example for me, they took a deliberate approach to AI by letting all the fintech startups pioneer techniques around fraud detection before they enhanced their own systems. And now both these companies have actually leapfrogged the competition, and you can too. So I would say stay focused on your product strategy. There are very much likely existing AI use cases out there that you can find that are aligned with your specific business needs and problems that don't require you chasing the latest headline. So you're exactly where you need to be, poised to implement with purpose rather than panic. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Stephen Mayner, and he's going to share some AI insights that we learned from enterprises who have embraced SAFe.
Thanks, Doug. So as Doug mentioned a couple of weeks ago at SAFe Summit Sorrento, we officially released the State of SAFe report, which summarized the findings that we collected from the State of SAFe survey that we had launched at our DC Summit last year. And one particular section of that survey in the report focused on this question of how is AI intersecting the practice of SAFe among our client organizations and among our practitioners that answered the survey. And the results were definitely enlightening. So let's just kind of walk through this. Let's go to the next slide. So we structured the survey aligned to the elements of our AI guidance that I'll touch upon in just a minute. But the first element we focused on was AI in the workplace. So our employees in our customer organizations being equipped and enabled to use AI to help them in the conduct of their daily tasks, their daily work. So one of the common patterns that we find when we talk to organizations that are well down their path in the AI journey, that 7-8% slice we just saw in the Menti graph, the common pattern is those organizations, I would almost guarantee all of you who answered in that very advanced stage, it's very common that those same organizations have made AI access widely available for their employees to use in their work. In fact, among the 1,000 or so organizations represented in the State of Safe report, only 12% have truly unlocked hands-on learning with AI for their employees. That's a pretty small percentage. Another 41% have given limited access. Now, that's a bigger number, but even so, as you dig into the data, what you find is that access does not always equate to usage. So a truly AI augmented workforce requires safe, and I don't mean Scaled Agile Framework, I mean safe to use, protected against concerns over privacy and data leakage and so forth. So it requires safe access, it requires training, and it requires messaging from leadership that AI is not just allowed, it's actually a strategic differentiator for the future of the company. Now, the best way to get that message across, of course, is for leaders to set that example, right? For the leaders to use AI themselves, to openly share their own learning journey with the rest of the company. It's an amazing permission giving strategy. So next slide. The second thing, the second topic area, so we talked about, giving AI access to your workforce, but now what about using AI in your products and solutions? Whether those solutions are customer facing, so we're going to actually build it into our product or our services, or whether we're building those solutions for our own internal usage, for market intelligence, operations management, and so forth. As you can see from the slide, the results are pretty clear. So 2/3 of organizations represented in the survey said they're using AI primarily for internal purposes, while only 1/3 are investing significantly into embedding AI into their customer-facing products. And honestly, that's not too surprising, because given the unique risks that come along with AI, it's actually easier to mitigate any fallout from an AI failure if we're just using it internally versus unleashing it to the public. Next slide. Speaking of those unique risks, that led us to our third question, where we sought to find out how far our customers have progressed toward adopting responsible AI policies and practices and systems. The news is more encouraging here, as the majority of companies represented in the results of the survey said they're actively pursuing responsible AI, at least to some degree. So still, with only 15% reporting comprehensive and mature responsible AI capabilities, that also says in this category, we still have a long way to go. It's also interesting, if you put these three slides side by side, to look at the correlations between the numbers of companies who provide that broad access to AI for employees, who are embedding AI in their solutions, and who also have sound responsible AI. Those companies that do all three are in the highest percentile of those industry leaders who are forging the paths for the rest of us to learn from. And let's be honest, they're also enjoying a competitive advantage as compared to the majority of the companies represented in the survey, who very much like, I think, Doug, it was close to 60% in our own informal survey we just conducted, that are in that very early exploration or experimentation stage. So our survey aligned with what the State of SAFE report said as well. Next slide. Finally, we wanted to see how AI is intersecting with the practice of SAFE, and if our customers are finding that our guidance on AI is useful for dealing with that question. So the results here are honestly also not too surprising. What we are learning from the most progressive AI companies that I've been doing empathy interviews with, what they're telling me is that fully embracing AI absolutely alters their approach to product development. It impacts workforce composition, it impacts team composition, it impacts their technical practices, and it impacts how they are adapting SAFE to their ways of working. And so that's where we're focusing a lot of our AI research right now, to capture those patterns and then to share those learnings out with a larger SAFE community. But we still have a lot of work to do to increase the awareness of this research that we're doing and the value of our AI guidance. Is our final question on AI clearly showed that so far, what we're writing on AI is not fully connecting with our community yet. So that's also a challenge that we're going to be tackling head on. Next slide. So the good news is that in those same conversations that I'm having with customers who report that AI is changing their agile practices, they're also confirming that the core values and principles promoted by Lean and Agile and SAFE are just as important, if not more important, than when they're developing traditional software products. In fact, they all resoundingly agree that a solid foundation of agility is a non-negotiable requirement to be effective with AI development. So for those organizations that have made adaptations to SAFE, even those that have contextualized and adapted to those SAFE practices are finding that as long as you're adhering to the principles, you're in a great position to adopt and scale AI. Next slide. So that's the key framing for understanding our conversation today on the intersection of AI and SAFE. First, as we've been emphasizing for the last 3 SAFE summits, SAFE is a framework, not a rule book, not a methodology. It is absolutely designed to evolve and to adapt. And we're working hard in the framework team to make that more clear and easier to do, to understand where those adaptation points are. That's an essential reminder as you start to integrate AI into your solutions, because I promise you, AI will change how your Agile teams work. It will change team composition, and it will definitely accelerate your learning cycles. The good news is that the principles of SAFE were designed for adaptability. And we're finding that our SAFE customers who are more advanced in their AI journey are telling us that while their SAFE practices had to evolve, the principles not only still apply, they actually provide a solid foundation for the adaptations that AI requires. The thing you have to stay focused on, and as we're going to say this several times throughout this webinar, and as our chief methodologist, Andrew Sales, said from the main stage in Sorrento 2 weeks ago, whether it's SAFE or whether it's AI, we have to think of both of those as enablers for solving real business problems at scale. They are not an end unto themselves. So you absolutely have to start with the business problems first, and then ask, how can AI and SAFE principles help our organization solve those business problems or seize those unique opportunities? Next slide. Now, since our earliest AI guidance article that I've led our team to write, This is a model that we keep coming back to, and it's being proven as a very simple, understandable, and practical decision-making framework for ensuring that the use of AI in our products and solutions starts with focusing on the business problem first. Then the decision on if AI can improve or accelerate that strategy comes next. But even then, it has to be validated by a relentless focus on the customer's needs and exploring options that provide the best value for the customer and for our organization. We need fast MVPs using the lean startup cycle. It's been a part of SAFE for quite a while now. That's an essential concept. That's what we're finding. We can build lots of use cases, but a lot of use cases end up sitting on the shelf. What we need is to build those around MVPs that we can actually go to market with. They have to be real production products and real production features. Otherwise, you just get stuck in this sea of AI pilots that never go to market and they can't scale. You're going to see that theme repeated in lots of articles in business publications around this topic of where are organizations in really getting ROI out of artificial intelligence. So what we're seeing is that this dynamic it's just accelerating everything. So 2-week Scrum cycles, too slow. Teams are mostly adopting a product-focused, continuous flow pattern. Team composition tends to be larger and tends to adjust more frequently. Team autonomy, absolutely essential, more important than ever. Where you have to have multiple teams to work on the solution, synchronization points are more frequent. Decentralized decision-making, absolutely critical. The learning cycles are just too fast for decisions to go up and down a hierarchy. These are just a few of the examples of how the principles still hold, but specific practices will change the more your organization embraces AI. Next slide. So it's great that we're seeing the synergies between SAFE and how customers are using the principles of agility as their foundation for being effective with their adoption of AI. But we think the conversation is even bigger than this correlation between SAFE and AI. SAFE has always been about changing our ways of working from project to product, from waterfall to lean agile DevOps. Well, likewise, AI is more than just a technology. AI has the power to also transform our ways of working, transform our business models, transform our products and services. In essence, what we are seeing and what we're starting to promote to our customers is think about becoming an AI organization. In Sorrento, we released a new Becoming an AI Organization competency article as part of our leadership and culture discipline. And we added 2 topics beyond the 3 that we'd already published to our model. So on the screen, you'll see the 3 things I already addressed: AI augmented workforce, AI enabled solutions, and responsible AI. But now we've added 2 more topics, right? This idea of what it means to lead an AI organization. And then also, how do we measure the impact and return on investment specifically for AI? We truly believe that as an organization gains the mastery of these 5 things, they absolutely will transform into an AI organization. And with that, Doug, I'll pass the baton back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Mayner. Just to reinforce, this slide's going to reinforce a lot of what Dr. Mayner just said, right? Is this idea of building this AI competency is anchored in agility. And to give credit back to Mr. Sales at the main stage from Sorrento, these pictures are from him, but it's like the first time someone put into pictures what I've been saying for years. And it goes back to more fake news. Despite what you may have heard, Agile is not dead. In fact, it's more relevant than ever in this age of AI. So I've got 2 kids in medical school, and when they ask, "Dad, what do you do?" I say, "Look, like you, I apply the scientific method. I just do it with products and software." That's the essence of Agile, a framework for learning from observation, hypothesis testing, and adaptation. So these principles are timeless because they're rooted in how we as humans naturally solve problems. So Agile and I believe, are a perfect match because AI systems themselves embody the scientific method. They form hypotheses. You're looking at all these people that are in AI. They're forming hypotheses, testing against data, refining their models, and they have this discipline of running controlled experiments. Just so they're not doing AI for AI's sake, they're creating what I call the Agile AI flywheel effect. Here's how that works. Agile methods generate more data points through rapid iterations, right? That's MVP concepts. AI learns from this expanded data set to make better predictions. These better predictions lead to better experiments, which then accelerate your overall learning and improving. And the cycle continues and scales, creating compound benefits over time. So when it goes back to answering that question I asked earlier, hey, that's a cute AI pilot. How does it scale? In my opinion, with Agile done well, with the scientific method, that's exactly how it scales. But back to Dr. Mayner's point again, we also have to remember this critical point. Business drives technology, not the reverse. While AI's capabilities are revolutionary, the fundamental principle is of business-driven technology that's unchanged and becoming even more critical because AI is going to be tempting to a lot of organizations toward a technology-first thinking, and we have to avoid that. This is why we need things, back to our principles, like solid economic decision-making frameworks within our LPM, our lean portfolio management, so that we're actively looking at different AI options. Each AI implementation should trace directly back to specific business outcomes, to OKRs. So the question isn't simply, how can we use AI? We have to stop asking that. We have to say, what critical business problems do we still need to solve, and how might AI help us solve those more effectively? So you're still going to have to look at things like decision rights and governance still need to be maintained, and the business determines these priorities. The technical teams can advise on our possibilities, but our ethics and AI guidelines need to stem from your business values. So when it comes to setting up how you want to do ethics, privacy, security, that needs to stem from your business values. So by anchoring your AI competency, being an AI competent organization, and anchoring those in these principles, you ensure that your organization is going to build solutions that, again, solve real problems rather than chasing technology fascination. That's what we need to do, is use Agile done well to solve these business problems. And so now I'm going to turn it back to Karen to share some insights on things that actually may need to change.
So I think that Dr. Stephen actually referred to these earlier, but we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that. So the continuous delivery pipeline is not just changing, it's being reimagined by AI, right? We're no longer just optimizing delivery, we're reinventing how we deliver it. So if you think about a couple of ways that we're doing that, AI-assisted code generation, what does it do? It accelerates development from idea to implementation at rates that we never imagined. Intelligent requirements analysis helps us refine needs before they're even articulated. Pretty powerful AI-generated test, automated detection and remediation that means fewer fires and faster fixes. Self-optimizing pipelines, learn and improve on their own. I mean, we're introduced to so many different things. So dev, test, and maintaining evolves, right? But it's not just about the tooling, it's also about the teams, right? To stay ahead, teams must evolve just as quickly. AI is no longer a specialty, it's a shared skill set. I see companies who say AI is this team. It is not your team, it is a shared skill set across the board. Cross-functionality expands into new roles sometimes, and then they change quicker than what we did before, right? Our teams and our makeup may change. Human AI collaboration is becoming a norm. Maybe having a partner sitting right beside you, requiring new team behaviors and decisions. And how we respond to change is changing too. Traditional Agile reacts after delivery. So a lot of times we would deliver something and then we would get our feedback. But now AI sees patterns and priorities before they even emerge, and we're getting feedback there. Dynamic reprioritization is now powered by prediction. And we're not just delivering faster, we're building what's next constantly. It's constantly changing and the landscape is constantly shifting. So that's our opportunity here. Next. So start where you are, because it sounds like a lot, right? You start to think about the impacts that we're seeing and we're actually helping embed into other organizations. And you say, how do I get started? So let's talk about that. The truth is, you don't need to have it all figured out, right? In the beginning of your AI journey, and Dr. Steve just said, not everybody does have it figured out. How do we do it? We do it together, right? The key is to start where you are. And there are 3 practical, powerful moves that you can make right now. First is going to be to educate your teams, your people, assess data maturity. Leaders must understand it. So education, when I say educate your teams, you must educate your leaders too. Leaders must understand this and provide the right environment. AI is only as strong as the people and the data that's behind it. Start by making sure your teams understand what AI can do and what it can't. This isn't about turning everybody into data scientists by any means. It's about building a shared language, a common understanding across the board. At the same time, assess your data readiness. Ask, is our data trustworthy? Is it even accessible? Complete enough to train and fuel AI tools? AI looks really glamorous, but the reality, it really requires grit. AI may seem glamorous if you follow the internet buzz, right? And you listen to everything. It's just they project a different persona out there. But for organizations that want to truly leverage its power, the journey demands foundational work that isn't always so flashy. It starts with your data. If your data is disorganized, inconsistent, or incomplete, there's critical work ahead of you. Get ready for it. AI systems are only as effective as the data that they're fed, and trust and outcomes starts with trust and inputs. Next comes the infrastructure, both technical and human. That means upskilling your workforce, modernizing your platforms, ensuring that the right architecture is in place. Sounds like a lot of work, doesn't it? So we talk about data ops, model ops, CI/CD pipelines. These aren't new concepts. They're fundamentals. The other day I was talking to Dr. Steven and he said something about a no kidding gap. And I said, that's amazing. That's exactly what this is. This is the no kidding gap. The weak links are here and they will quickly reveal your gaps in your company and stall progress. Successful AI isn't just about new models. It's about strong foundations, resilient systems, and organizational readiness. Because the truth is, without data maturity and without your people being upskilled, AI cannot deliver on its promise. So looking for AI opportunities. I know that's a long one, but there's lots of impacts going on in there. Second, looking for opportunities in flow. I like to say process and product. The easiest one that we see people adopting is actually the process. So in your processes, AI can help automate repetitive tasks, predict delays, accelerate decision-making, right? Those are all things that it can help with today. That is the easiest thing for somebody typically to adopt and to start on. But you also want to start to look for AI in your products, right? It can surface insights, personalized experience. But that's a little scarier, right? That's forward facing. So what we're seeing is a lot of companies where they start on their internal processes and then they progressively move to their products. Don't just look at your delivery pipelines, look at end-to-end value stream and where AI can help you. Where are the friction points? Where's the complexity? That is where you're going to see AI thrive. And finally, I'm going to give a little bit of a blurb here for partner with somebody. I would say partner with Icon for guidance, right? This journey is complex, but you don't have to navigate it alone. Icon Agility has walked this path with other organizations just like yours. So we help identify the right use cases, bring in some best practices, and tailor your approach so AI aligns with your safe implementation. It does not disrupt it. And so we've found some very unique ways for that, and we have that experience. We're not just talking about theory, we're delivering on outcomes. With that, I also want to talk a little bit about some training. I know Doug is going to go into it more, but why? Why would you use Icon for some of the AI training? Doug is one of our super experts too, and he's helped actually curate a whole cadre of different training that we have found valuable inside of other companies. Things that you walk out that next day, and you're using hands-on. So pretty impressive, as well as we have some leadership training, which Dr. Steven referred to that quite a bit. Hey, how do you lay this culture and then this environment, and how do you give them what they need to be successful? So there's a lot of very personalized and proven training out there. So we just wanted to put a little bit of a sales pitch in there for that. So again, what I'm saying is start where you are, empower your teams, explore the flow of work and the future of your product, and partner up when you're ready to go a little faster. The future of Agile is AI powered, and it starts now. All right. All
Did it
right.
change?
No, that's okay. It was, sorry, I didn't see it change. So as we look at AI, at how AI is reshaping the way we deliver value, it's important to pause and ask, what role will you play in that transformation? Some of you might be pioneers. I would love to talk to you if you are. I would love to talk to you talk to the others too that are just adapting, but you might be pioneers, you're early adopters. You're already experimenting and exploring and helping shape the future of AI in your organization. You're ahead and you're learning fast and you're pushing the boundaries. Others may be adapters. You're being thoughtful and intentional in integrating AI into your existing safe practices, making sure it aligns with your teams, your governance, and your outcomes. You're bridging innovation with stability. That's most of us, it looked like on our Mentimeter survey, but we also need to talk about fear, because fear kills innovation. I tell people all the time, I used AI a long time ago when I worked for a large transportation company, and I thought it would take off, but it didn't. And why did it not? Because there was true fear around AI. So I've seen organizations stall, not just because they didn't have the right technology, but because they were afraid to take the first step. Fear of doing it wrong, fear of losing control. If that resonates, you're not alone. But the key is not to let that fear dictate your pace. It's here. I think that Doug said that. It's here. It's not going away. Before we could slow it down, we could stall it. You can no longer do that. And finally, your mindset shapes success. The difference between those who thrive in the AI-enabled future and those who struggle won't be tools or budgets. It will be mindsets. That's exactly what you're going to need, is that mindset. Leaders and teams who embrace learning, experimentation, and collaboration will be the ones who create lasting impact. So take a moment and reflect, where do you see yourself on this slide today? And just importantly, where do you want to be 6 months from now?
Awesome. Well, we've got one more opportunity here to interact. So given what you've just heard, which AI capability area, we'd love to know from SAFE, SAFE is saying, hey, we're putting a lot out there. What resonates? What capability area would benefit you the most from expert guidance to accelerate your organization's AI journey? So you can simply scan a QR code. You can select up to 7 items on this list. It's not a one and done. If there's multiple areas, we want to know, what keeps you up at night, right? Where do you need the help? We'll give this just a minute.
And we're going to Q&A right after this.
Yeah, and we're going to go to Q&A right after this. Exactly. Thanks. So just give you a minute, and we're headed to Q&A. A lot of, I think we've had like 20 plus questions submitted. We probably won't get to all of them, but we're trying to actively curate them. Yes, like, look, needs all over the board. I love it. There's no one right answer. That's what we're learning.
Do you have a question?
I'm shamelessly excited about the ones that are at the top, 13%, 14% developing an AI strategy and roadmap, identifying use cases. I have a solution for that. Or we do at Icon Agility. Not just me, Karen does. Other people at Icon do. All right, why don't we go ahead and shift over into our Q&A if it lets me advance. So we've got some Q&A, but first I was going to turn it back over to Dr. Stephen Mayner to say, where is SAFE heading when it comes to AI? what are some things heading? I know there's some questions in the chat specifically about this too that you've already tagged yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just say this briefly. This is a huge investment area for Scaled Agile. It is, it is absolutely a dominant topic among the 20,000 plus organizations worldwide that use our practices. It's something that our 400 plus global partners like Icon around the world are hearing from their customers. And as we've always done, we want to lean into those emerging topics like AI, so that we can learn and we can share those learnings with you and we can all get better at it. It's about all I can say right now. I'll say stay tuned. What you're seeing is just the tip of the iceberg, and we look forward to having a lot more to talk about in this space between now and when we reach Denver for our fall summit.
Awesome. So that kind of dovetails into this first question here is how can people that are practicing SAFe or looking at AI, how do they keep up with the advances, right? Particularly with regard to SAFe?
Yeah, for sure. So if you've been around SAFe for a long time and maybe aren't connected recently into our many different channels. We've got channels on social media. We have channels for our partners, for our practitioners, lots of different ways we put information out. If you're not paying attention to those, I highly recommend, maybe coming back, because we're putting things out literally on a weekly basis on our framework blog, just on the site that my team runs under the framework guidance articles. We're literally publishing every week. On top of that, there are other channels, other updates that are going out. The number of new products on a wide range of topics that we've taken to market over the last 6 months has accelerated exponentially. So stay connected is the best thing I can say. If you disconnected from mailing lists in the past, contact us, get reconnected. If you haven't visited the platform SAFe Studio lately and check the information out there, do that. There's a lot going on, but there's a little effort required on your part to be curious and get connected into what actually is happening. And we will share that information out as fast as it's available. And we are moving. I just saw another question in here about updating SAFe on like an annual basis. Folks, that day is long gone. The big, every year, 2, 3 year updates of the framework, those days are in the past. We are updating constantly. So again, if you stay disconnected, you're not going to be able to see those. So get connected, get engaged. We do communicate frequently.
Thank you. We had some questions back on some of this, the State of SAFe survey. Were these numbers from companies across the globe? And it's just
Yes.
some of the background behind some of these numbers.
100%. If you've not had a chance to download the survey and read it, there's links in the presentation. I know those have been shared in chat. Take a moment to download it and read it. A lot of those questions are answered. In the back of the report, you'll actually see the distribution across geographies, countries across the world. Certainly, there's a strong tilt toward the U.S. market. That's still our largest market for SAFe, but you do see lots of representation from other parts of the world. What the data says, what we've done in terms of correlational analysis, is that there were, particularly with the AI questions, there were not statistically significant variations by geography. I think you can look at that and have confidence it's fairly representative, whether you're in the US market, the European market, the Asian market. We didn't see a lot of variance.
Awesome. Here's a question that we get asked a lot. Where did it go? I just saw it. Sorry, I'm trying to scroll through here, but can you comment a little, any of us, about security around using AI and the risk of exposing intellectual property? Get that one all the time.
Yeah. I'll answer real quick, then you guys can share as well. So that's why the responsible AI guidance is so critical. That's why that was the first place we developed deeper guidance, and we actually have a micro-credential course to get organizations on the path to responsible AI. Short answer is this: there are well-proven technology approaches that your technology organization can implement to give you the kind of access to the generative AI tools that are available today, but do it in such a way that it's inside the firewall, it's inside your protection zone, so that your proprietary confidential company data can be loaded into a database and be accessed by that large language model, for example. But that requires very specific effort from your technology folks. You can't just go out and do that as an average user. If you just fire up ChatGPT and put confidential data out there, you're not going to be happy with that. That's not going to end well. So please don't do that. But check with your company, because more and more companies are realizing the power of being able to use these tools to query massive amounts of internal data and find patterns that would be much more difficult with the technologies they've used up to this point. So if that's not happening yet, ask around, ask your IT folks, are we going in that direction? When will we have that capability? Because that's how that's done. You don't just, like I said, you don't just fire up your own private ChatGPT account and put customer data in there.
Not
a good idea. Yep.
Not just about sharing confidential data outside of the company, but now you're also bringing other data inside of the company. So it's influencing your decision models. So a lot of companies are starting to realize we need to build our own internal. Exactly. I just wanted to make sure and highlight that too. It's not just about sharing your confidential, but also about pulling in other opinions that can influence those decision models. And then all of a sudden you're in court, right?
Yeah, that's why our guidance on responsible AI has 14 different touch points, 14 different risk areas that a comprehensive responsible AI strategy will address. So you can get to that article right off the framework site, to go into the AI article, and the link is in there. So we've provided a lot of information on, just like you said, it's not just one area. There's a range of things that you need to account for in your responsible AI plan.
Yeah, and I know, Karen, like a lot of standards, like we've noticed, like the EU is, in terms of standards and what companies across the globe are implementing as example policies. I mean, we're starting to see a lot of advances there.
Absolutely. Europe's always ahead of us, right? But I would tell you that if you're a company, no matter where you're located, that you need to be looking from a national perspective, from a country specific. Here in the US, we have country, state, and you also have industry regulations that you need to consider. So sometimes it seems overwhelming, but it's absolutely doable. You just need to know and understand the landscape. Great point.
Here's a question that's kind of specific to something we shared about, what changes, what doesn't change, and the idea of, long-lived teams. We're probably going to need to be flexible there. So any idea what impact AI is going to have on agile team compositions? For example, do all team members need to be able to develop AI agents, adapt, or use agents with prompts? What is the impact on the Scrum Master role or other roles? Either of you two want to comment, or before I jump in?
Go ahead.
Well, I'll just share briefly what we're hearing from the customers that I've talked to. So there were several things packed in there. Let me kind of address them one at a time. Team composition, size-wise, I'm not saying that we're going to have 40-person teams, but we are finding that when you think about the different elements of an AI capability, whether it's AI product or an AI feature in a product, there are different knowledge domains. And if we want to keep our teams as autonomous as they can be, and that's another element, that there's even a greater need for truly autonomous teams, like we've always taught in Agile, but now it's even more important. But to have all the capabilities inside and organic to that team, whether you're talking about the data analytics, data science, to the algorithm, to actually monitoring and maintaining. Go back into the past. Software development teams, we'll build it and we'll throw it over the wall to somebody to test it, and somebody else will then operate it. Now, that was always a bad idea, but that's kind of where we've come from, right? You can't do that with AI. Once you build it, that's just the beginning of the process. You are constantly operating, tuning, refining, monitoring, checking, so many different aspects. So your model ops, your AI ops, your data ops, there's lots of different surface areas. So to have a team that can be fully autonomous, it just expands the size of teams a little bit. That's just what we're seeing in some of the more advanced teams. Maybe you guys have some other patterns on some of the other elements in that question. I don't want to hog the airtime.
I know some things that I've seen is like, those that are super concerned about privacy, security, responsible AI, right? They have AI ethics people on their team, right? Like maybe not full-time members, but they have people that represent that legal, or they've retrained their business analysts that are on their team to understand AI ethics, but they're bringing those on. I have teams that I'm working with now that actually have basically an AI developer and an AI tester on the team, right? And they're having to interact with that person. Like the first round of code or the first round of testing goes to this bot, if you will. Now, there's always a human in the middle because I don't trust them yet. I don't think we're there yet. But, but it's saving them tons of time. Like, I just saw somebody yesterday read a 300-page legal document, using an engine in 30 seconds. How long would a paralegal take to go through that, right? And summarized it effectively. So it's like those types of things. And I'm seeing that happening in developing, in testing, writing use cases. I haven't seen in this question, I haven't yet seen an effective Scrum Master replacement in an AI. I just think there's too much nuance in the coaching role that has to happen there and understanding the human dynamics of a team. You can get some of the taco agile, the team and ceremony stuff good, but I don't see replacing that person that is there to help the team achieve higher and higher performance in an AI yet.
Yeah, I would agree. And on top of that, there are so many things that this technology is bringing. It's a little future out there, not quite fully there yet, but we're starting to see, that our teams may have, not to anthropomorphize, but almost like an AI team member. As we get to agentic AI and some things where the AI has a more independent ability to do tasks than just in response to our prompts like we do today. But just think about how much change that brings into a team, and all of the human factors of being able to facilitate the change management of that and find the new patterns and define the efficiencies. A great team coach will still have value. Now, they've got to become upskilled into AI themselves, right? So
absolutely. Yep.
That's going to be the challenge.
Well, and maybe, and what we're seeing is sometimes not as much of a challenge because everybody thought, oh, do I need to hire new people, right? AI is coming in, I need to hire new people. And what we're finding out is that people are easily trained on AI. And what we need is their business knowledge and other knowledge in there. And so we're seeing that a lot of people are being able to embrace it really quickly. So definitely want to make sure that everybody's not afraid of that. It's not like that you're totally replacing your entire workforce. You are educating and upskilling the workforce, right? And I would say that everybody needs it. I think part of this question is who needs it and who doesn't. I would say everybody in your company needs it.
Yeah, that's the whole point behind the AI augmented workforce guidance. We just did a workshop in Sorrento on this topic, and the headline out of that was, look, we see lots of questions. Well, how can AI help me in this role? How can I help a Scrum Master? How can I help an RTE? How can I help a product manager? You could ask that question on literally every single role inside the organization. How can it help an accountant? How can it help somebody in HR? The answer is it's not that you have a special, different AI for each of those roles. The thing is, you've got to have a basic competency in the mechanics of how the current AI technology is utilized. Now, there will be role-specific things usually in baked into software that you're seeing. A lot of our software partners are building AI features into their products. And so there may be in your ALM, for example, things that are specifically designed to help a Scrum Master or to help a product owner because you're inside their tool and now you have access to their AI features and the tool's designed for your role. So that just makes sense, right? Same's going to be true in your ERP or, for your finance folks, et cetera. So it is universal. There's a base level of knowledge that from front lines to leaders that's going to be required if the organization as a whole is going to be in that top percentile and have the competitive advantage in the marketplace that's going to give the organization.
Oh, I would love to drill down into the other 48 questions out here, but again, we've got an hour, right? So I think we've probably got to land the plane here today. I appreciate the questions. It's so awesome to see people being curious about this. At the end of the day, that's what I love. The curiosity, the asking the questions. So where do you go from here? Just to kind of wrap this up, because we have to close today. But you don't have to go it alone. We've said this already. Karen said this. We have Icon, we have Safe, right? And whether you're a pioneer or someone adapting, you don't have to pay the pioneer tax. We've already learned a lot of the lessons. We've been in the trenches. We can help. And not just us, but there's insights from the Safe community. The AI community in Safe is very much alive. It's very much active, right? It's something that I go out and I check a couple times a week because there's constantly conversations being happened about what we're learning in the broader ecosystem. So take advantage of these things. Draw on our insights. You're supported by Icon Agility and Scaled Agile. This is a journey that's unfolding for everyone. Don't rush headlong into it. Get help, right? Learning, adapting, stay curious, right? Try to remove from the abstract concepts down to how is this going to solve business problems for me? How do I really deliver business value with this? So here's just some things that you can go together. Dr. Mayner mentioned this article here is this article. I need to drag this over, but this building an AI organizational competency. Great landing page, great Control D, bookmark this one because this has links to all the articles that are happening. And this is one of those articles that is evolving. So as he said, the days of big releases of Safe are over, right? You're going to see updates on this page as to, how do we build this competency? What are some things that we can do? Go to the state of Safe report from 2025. Get these insights for yourself. Find out what these are. You can come out to Icon Agility's site. What do we have in place, right? Do you need an AI-powered assessment? Do we need, hey, someone was asking about AI use case and roadmap development. We can help you upskilling your workforce, whether that's, everyone's doing prompt engineering, but how about by role to where you can walk away and actually use it? Or how about upskilling in AI ethics and responsible use? All of these things, you can actually get help. So one of our wonderful people in sales, Stella O'Brien, Stella at iconagility.com. She would love to nothing more than to take your request going, hey, is there any possibility you can help us? You can find us on LinkedIn. So all the things you can do to keep learning together. Pay attention to some of our upcoming future webinars. We've got some coming up. So if today's webinar sparked your interest, we're just getting started, right? So we've got a webinar series. So coming up on May 6th through 11th, John Tanner is leading a webinar called Uncertainty to Action. How do you kickstart your AI journey? How do you develop a compelling business case? And then we're going to be doing probably in late June, a foundations first webinar where we'll explore how to leverage safe principles and core competencies to create the right environment for your AI success. If you're ready to move beyond those cute AI pilots, we've got from experimentation to impact coming up later this year. We'll tackle critical challenges of prioritizing what matters most to deliver AI that delivers measurable results. And then we've got scaling AI. So when you're looking to look to leadership, what approaches are needed to expand a successful initiative across your enterprise, we're going to be looking at that as well. So that's the top of the hour. I hope you have found this entertaining and engaging and informative. But just remember, you're not behind. You're right where you need to be. You've got time. Just make sure you have the right mindset, get with the right partners, and you're going to be well positioned to lead in this AI era. So thank you for your time. And that is a wrap.
Thank you.
Thanks.